So today we are diving into one of the most critical challenges of the 21st century. How do we shift global capital to both protect our planet as well as driving resilient financial returns? And joining me is someone at the very forefront of this shift. So thank you so much, Cara Williams, Global Head of Climate and Sustainability at Mercer, for joining me. Thank you.
Oh, thanks for having me.
Do you want to start off by just introducing a little bit about you and what you do?
Sure. So I am with Mercer, which is an investment consultant as well as HR consulting. Mm-hmm. My role is Global Head of Climate and Sustainability, but I'm across health, wealth, and career. So it's HR consulting as well as investment consulting. So we work with companies on the HR side. Oftentimes it's establishing frameworks, so people sustainability and how to look after your people or your communities that you operate in a way that is maybe free and equitable, but also has business underlying, critical components like, attraction, retention, and things for workforce. And then on the investment consulting side is, sort of the more traditional, where we have assessed asset managers for a very long time, I think about 24 years now, on what used to be called ESG integration on their processes, and we work with clients on climate transition and building out of portfolios along that. So it's a really wide array of things that we do and how we work with clients.
And you've been with Mercer for more than 2 decades, is that right?
Well, thanks for that. Yes,
Sorry.
I've been with Mercer.
I want to ask what your journey's been to sustainability.
Yeah, so I've been with Mercer for over 21 years.
Yeah. And so have you worked in the sustainability space the whole time? Like, how's your journey been to your current role?
So, my journey has probably been like many people in sustainability, which means it started with having nothing to do with sustainability.
Yeah.
I have grown up in the investment world, but that said, I've always had a sort of deep interest, particularly on the diversity side. Have always sort of taken on sort of various sort of roles and things within Mercer. I mentioned our HR consulting, so we used to do something called When Women Thrive, which took a real deep dive on what works to sort of maintain and keep your female workforce engaged. Yeah. And then, I think that we started what we used to call our responsible investment team. Now it's our sustainable investment team. Before I even joined, and I was always super close to that and the developments and the issues and challenges that we faced along the years as we've sort of grown that as a sort of freestanding capability within the organization. So about 5 years ago, I think we were looking to see if there was something that we ought to be doing in this space rather than just being a tagline. We've always said we impact over 100 million lives, which we do, either through their savings or through their health benefits. To me, it was something that was really important. I threw my hat in the ring to say, yes, I'd absolutely love to lead this, have a look at how we as an organization, so my role is partially internal, how we as an organization look at sustainability as something that's core to us and how we operate, and use that as a way to obviously engage our colleagues, but also then how do we pull it together for clients and how do we make it make sense? And I think as things have gotten more complex over the last year and a half, it's been particularly helpful. I think that I'm UK-based American. I sort of get both sides and how we try to navigate these challenges.
So, like you say, sort of maybe more a tricky or a complex year and a half. How has that conversation changed that you're having with those asset owners about net zero sustainability?
Yeah, I mean, we keep using the term backlash. I think there's some negatives. Well, there are a lot of negatives, but there are also some positives that have come about this, right? So I think when we had ESG was all the rage, 5 years ago, and every asset manager started to kind of rebrand their product as ESG. It didn't really mean much, right? And you'd see things like investors saying and thinking that they were doing good, with their money, which frankly ESG is not necessarily what the original intention of what ESG is. And then that obviously went towards sustainability as well, and it got overused. So I think what has happened is it has allowed for some serious clarification, a relook at exactly what is the if we're talking about investments, what is a product truly trying to achieve, what can it achieve, and what should an investor be looking for when they invest in these things. So I think that forced the hand of clarification, and I think that part of it's been good. There's I'd say on the negative side, obviously, is we have really seen a pullback on investment, on climate as well as if we use the acronym of ESG, sustainability as well as on the social aspects. So that has been the negative. But like I said, I think the clarification and clarity has been really important, and we needed more transparency, and kind of the sort of backlash and pushback has allowed for that.
So on that sort of theme of clarity, how are you personally defining a sustainable finance model that is actually benefiting a company rather than just being a sort of tick box exercise?
Yeah, I mean, I think, again, because of the climate over the last, and sorry to use that word, over the last year and a half, 2 years, I think companies have had, this has really encouraged organizations to dig deep and decide what is going to be sort of the authentic them, and them being personifying corporations. But I think companies really have used this as an opportunity to say, this is something we really care about, and we are double downing, right? So you have certain organizations that that have said diversity is critical to them because they view it as a revenue source for them, because they get better employees, they can serve their clients better, and their clients are diverse as well. So you do have a lot of organizations who've said, okay, this is important to us. So it could be diversity that's important to them. It could be climate change. It could be various aspects of, again, if I use the ESG as a framework, there are lots of different aspects where you have organizations who really use this as an opportunity to try to think about themselves and who they are and what they want to represent. So that to me has been the best thing about this process. Then you also have organizations who really never did care very much, but kind of their hands were forced to at least report on things. And that's where we're seeing the ones who kind of shut down. And I do think that over the course of a few years, we're going to start to see the ramifications of that, right? Because just about every company, regardless of what you do, be it manufacturing, be it agriculture, you are usually somehow either impacted by, or you are impacting the environment in some way. You may be reliant on water, could be for cooling, for infrastructure, could be for a number of things. I think a lot of companies are going to have this moment of reckoning of kind of saying, you know what, actually, double materiality is a real thing. I need to measure it, and I need to manage it, and I think that's what we're going to start seeing come to the fore.
This podcast is in partnership with Amazon Business. Amazon Business is your one-stop destination for everything your organization needs. Think of it as the Amazon you already know and love, but specifically re-engineered for the way you work. Amazon Business gives you access to business-only pricing on millions of items and quantity discounts that scale with your growth. It's about spending less time bogged down in those manual tasks and more time on what really matters. So head over to Amazon Business and make the power of Amazon work for you.
So Mercer's pioneered tools like the ACT framework, ACT framework, ACT framework?
ACT
framework. How are data-driven models like that helping investors move beyond sort of carbon footprinting and things like that to identifying companies that have capacity to transition?
Yeah, so I think carbon footprint is incredibly important. I'm not gonna put it down, but that is very much a backward facing, right? It's what did you emit is in the past. What ACT tries to do is to kind of look through the windshield rather than the rear view mirror. And what we're looking for there is viability and credibility of companies that have claimed that they're on a transition path. And as we know, right, everybody and their brother's cousin came up with a 2030, 2040, or 2050 net zero target. I won't say plan. I almost said plan. And the fact is that most of them didn't have a plan, and certainly didn't have a credible plan. And what ACT does is it really digs deep into that, like who actually does have a viable and achievable plan. What are the stages? Are those being measured along the path? As we've seen, just about every company, regardless of the environment around these things, have committed and recommitted to their SBTIs, or their science-based targets. So those are still very much alive and well. But what now is being asked is, okay, well, how do you plan on achieving those things? And I think that's where there's been a lot more pressure, and it's good pressure because you see companies that actually are starting to think through, okay, we need to be better about our carbon offsetting. We need to be better about maybe our travel, the things that they can control, the various levers that they have, and starting to flip those accordingly in order to hit those future targets, because that is what ACT is looking for. that is what, I won't say all analysts, but certainly there are a number of analysts now that do pose these questions when they're speaking, to the CEOs at the quarterly earnings. They are posing these questions, and those answers are going to be really important. And if they're not answering or they're avoiding those questions, then that's a sign probably that you're not going to get an asset manager to allocate quite as much to these organizations.
And looking to sort of those things that you really can't control, so climate risks, floods, heat waves, all that side of things, how can investors build portfolios that have resilience built in, that are resilient to those things?
So, I think the thing that's becoming much more apparent is the fact that a lot of underlying assets in asset management portfolios are frankly not insured, or are getting to a point of being uninsured. And that's a serious risk. So what we're really seeing now is a major uptick in asset managers starting to look at the insurability of their portfolios. So looking deep down into their underlying assets to see what is the exposure, right? And it could just be, that factories are in flood zones. It could be that employees can't get to work, even if the company itself is safe and built in such a way that they've got the generators and they're not going to flood out. If your employees can't get to the office, you need to incorporate that as a serious risk, right? So I think a lot more organizations now are, again, because of the asset management community, are having to look at these things and look at these additional risks as true risks to viability of their businesses.
Your 2026 outlook highlights nature risk as one of these top priorities, right? So how is Mercer helping your clients price that cost of nature as a market sense?
Yeah, I mean, so always the problem in this space, right? The issue with sustainability is it feels pretty unattainable, right? And it just seems like there are just so many different factors that you need to take into account. Nature, I think, if we take it just very basic to where we know we have certain exposures, water, I think, is probably the easiest, right? So, and the development and the rapid uptick of AI has made the water scarcity much more evident, right? So you see a lot more organizations now starting to think about it, and an infrastructure asset manager has to think about access to water for the cooling of those data centers, and now there also has to be more of a broader view of, okay, if you're going to get the access to the water, is that water being diverted from other communities, right? So people now actually have to think more broadly than what is the input that I need, and then more importantly, what are going to be potentially the ramifications. So nature, I think, it has been very difficult to price. It's easier to view it as the risk. What we're hoping to is to find more opportunities as far as an investment opportunity goes, and we are seeing more of that, right? Where there's maybe more increased productivity, be it a mangrove in a market where suddenly they're able to do more increased oyster farming, right? They're that, and then that uptick in productivity becomes what's investable alongside the carbon credits, right? So I think a further development of the carbon markets will lead to, I think, really more interesting projects that will take place around the globe around nature. Carbon credits makes it a lot more tangible and easier to understand and easier to see what exactly you are going to get as far as returns.
And are you finding that your clients, the asset managers you're working with, are they wanting to start this dialogue up with you, or are you having to sort of bring it to them?
So the asset manager community, I think they're working sort of in tandem with us, right? So our clients are the asset owners, and the asset owners, we have, obviously, it depends on where they're located. Some are incredibly sophisticated and they're innovating themselves, right? So we're staying with them alongside, understanding their innovation and sometimes watching what they're doing, which is usually sort of de-risking projects by co-investing with maybe government organizations, or they're co-investing with NGOs, right? So we have those clients. Then we have the clients who are much more nascent in their journey, if they're even on a journey. But what we need to highlight with them is always the risk piece, right? So while they may be less interested in terminology around climate change, they certainly are less interested maybe in over dramatization of the terminologies and the language we use. But when you bring it down to how many of those underlying assets that they own via their asset managers are actually genuinely at risk of flood or any other earthquakes, fires. It can go on and on, right?
Yeah.
So the more that they understand that is a true investment risk, then we can talk to them really quite rationally and calmly. So it's really it takes it away from this whole sphere of sort of the emotion. This is truly about investment acumen, and they really need to understand what risks they have in their portfolios. And oftentimes, it is nature and climate risk.
It's so interesting. I feel like I'm having conversations with so many people at the moment who are about the language we're using in the sustainability world at the moment, and I'm feeling a real theme of just moving away from that emotive side of things. Okay, so we've got more than 50 different sustainable taxonomies worldwide. How close are we to a common language in sustainable finance specifically?
I think TNFD was a really good start in trying to get everybody on the same page. TCFD, and now we've got TNFD.
Yeah.
I think what we're seeing is, while there are different taxonomies, that there is a merging and an understanding of, let's try to minimize complexity, right? And there was a lot of complaints, obviously, around the EU trying to simplify some of their reporting requirements. That was really important. And I think, we talk about getting, sort of moving the emotive out. You also have to deal, talking about, the complexity and the additional cost of regulation, I think, has really, dissuaded a lot of folks from seeing the value of sustainability. When you speak to a bank and they've got over 200 employees that are only focused on reporting and not actually doing anything, that's a problem, right? So, so I think that there is a simplification that's coming. I do think that absolutely you've got a merging of these taxonomies. We're not going to have 50 going forward. I mean, I really think that, again, TNFD for sure has had, you've got certain countries have already picked it up, and you see that a lot of us are saying, let's not create our own. Let's kind of jump on this bandwagon, maybe with some tweaks, but keep it sort of the famous keep it simple, stupid. It always works.
Okay, so we like to play a little game. So I wondered if you'd be up for playing Time Capsule. So we're going to bury a hypothetical time capsule that will be opened in 2050, that will show the sort of past, present and future of sustainable finance. So I need you to choose 3 things that are going to go into it. The relic, so something from the finance world today that you hope is completely obsolete by 2050. And then something from the present blueprint. But if you want to start with the relic, what do you think you'd put into this time capsule?
Absolutely, sort of ESG sustainability as a standalone. That it should just become something that is part and parcel of investment process.
So that sort of sustainability is a bolt-on ethics sort of thing.
Yeah, and having not against any of these folks, but not as a standalone team, right? That every single person that's making asset allocation is thinking about the sustainability aspect.
Okay, and the present, so something that we're relying on now that you can only see improving.
AI. When it comes to, obviously, we've got the negative side, the environmental impact of AI, but on the positive side, it is making impact investment so much more viable, so much more approachable, and so much more transparent. I think we're going to see a lot more flows going towards impact investment, and it's really because of AI.
Interesting. I'm so intrigued to see where it all goes. And the blueprint, so that's a piece of technology or a policy that you want future generations to know that we got right.
I think looking at sustainability. Yeah, I think the fact that we're finally considering this, I mean, like I said, we started 24 years ago doing this. The fact that it's now becoming so much more commonplace to at least it's being debated, right?
Yeah, at least we're having the conversation.
Yeah, so I think that's something the finance world is getting right for now, and knock on wood, will become even more integrated.
Amazing. Okay, we are going to have to wrap up in a minute, but I do feel like we could talk about this for hours. So just one thing to wrap up. So looking a little bit less into the future, but if we were sitting here in 2030, what's one green investment innovation, I guess you'd call it now, that you would hope has become standard practice?
A regulated carbon market. That will make a huge difference. As soon as carbon credits are regulated and the standardization, that will be a massive bolster for so many investment projects around the globe.
Do you think there's anything that's sort of the stopping point to that now that anyone can do to help lift it, help get that on track?
I think there's still there are a few players. We need consistency. It's it's a little bit like the regulations, or everybody, various folks are jumping in. Some people better than others. Until there's something that's more standardized and recognized, you're just not going to see corporations jumping in as comfortably, and you're certainly not going to see investors jumping in as quickly. So yeah, I mean, I think we're kind of right now. It's just because it's nascent. We're getting in our own way for now.
Well, let's hope we stop doing that as quickly as possible. Hey, Cara, thank you so much for joining. This has been so interesting.
Oh, pleasure. Thank you.
And so what do you say?